Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for a conversation about the moving, beautiful, and insightful film, Joyce Carol Oates, A Body in the Service of Mind. I'd like to introduce the moderator of our discussion today, Lisanne Skyler. She is a writer-director of numerous documentary, short, and fiction films. Her feature, Getting to Know You, based on Joyce Carol Oates' short stories from the 1991 collection Heat, was an official selection of the Sundance and Venice Film Festivals and received much critical acclaim for her adaptation. More recently, she directed the Oscar shortlisted documentary Brillo Box, 3 Cents Off, which is streaming on HBO Max. Lisanne serves on the faculty of the University of Arizona School of Theater, Film, and Television in Tucson. She will introduce our other special guests for this conversation. Thank you, Lisanne.
Thank you, Joanne. It's so exciting to bring together in conversation two creators who have contributed so much to our understanding, our artistic appreciation, and our collective love of Joyce Carol Oates. Stig Björkman is the director of Joyce Carol Oates' A Body in the Service of Mind, which had its world premiere at the Telluride Film Festival. Stig is a film critic, a director, and author of books on Ingmar Bergman, Woody Allen, Lars von Trier. He directed Images from the Playground in 2009 and But Film is My Mistress, about Ingmar Bergman, as well as Transformer, a portrait of Lars von Trier. His film Ingrid Bergman, in her own words, screened in Cannes in 2015. Welcome, Stig, who is joining us from Sweden. Stig, I want to thank you for your exquisite film. It not only deepens our understanding of the world of Joyce Carol Oates, but you truly captured what it feels like to be in her presence with such lightness and gracefulness and poignancy. I'm now thrilled to introduce Randy Souther. Since 1995, Randall Souther has maintained Celestial Timepiece, a Joyce Carol Oates patchwork, which is a comprehensive website that is a resource for students, scholars, fans of Joyce Carol Oates. The site actually began as a very simple biography, just one simple page, and has grown tremendously over the years to become really a free access hub of information and to encourage discussion and scholarship among Joyce Carol's admirers around the world. It's really the de facto official Joyce Carol Oates website. In addition to creating and maintaining the site, Randy serves in the reference department at Lisanne Library of University of San Francisco in California with a focus on reference technology. He became head of reference and research services in 2011 and head of reference and access services in 2021. Welcome, Randy, and thank you for this incredible resource you've provided over the years. And it was wonderful to see your name in the credits and to learn about all the leads you provided to Stig during the making of this film. So I'd like to begin with, I'd like to ask you both if you could take us to your first moment of discovering Joyce's writing for the first time. What was that moment of discovery, or what was that spark or that feeling that would later lead you to each create work about her and to devote so much time to recording and sharing her work with the world?
Before I met Joyce, I had read, I think, 2 early novels from her. One was called in Swedish, Angel of Light. I should have checked what the original title was, but it was an early novel by her. But then I read Blonde, and it hit me so. I mean, it's a fantastic book in so many respects. So I wanted to contact Joyce and to talk about this book. And that's how I met her the first time. I went to Princeton to have a longer conversation with Joyce about Blonde. And that's how my personal knowledge with Joyce started. I mean, it's 20 years ago.
Right. And Randy, do you remember your first Joyce Carol Oates moment, book?
I do. I was working in a bookstore at the time. This is back in, I think, probably 1987. I just picked up her novel in paperback, Maria Alive. I had heard of her, but I'd never read anything by her, so I just thought I would read the book. And I have to admit, I was kind of confused by it. I felt like it was just going over my head. So I picked up her then current book, which was You Must Remember This. And that one just kind of blew me away. And after that, I just started reading everything of hers. This was before the internet existed, but in my work, as the internet came into libraries and then the web came along, I wanted to create a web page just to learn how to do HTML and that kind of coding. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll do a bibliography of Joyce Carol Oates and just try to list all of her works. And so that's how it began.
I think that that website must be a full-time job. So Stig, once Joyce said yes to the film, and I know that was a 20-year conversation over emails. When she said yes, what was your first thought? Did you know how you were going to approach the film? How did you decide how you would now?
When she finally, because I had been on her for, I think I went to see her in 2009 together with a photographer, and we wanted to, well, of course, already then I presented her my idea to make a film about her, and she said no, she was not into that. And so I continued to write her, and I also met her a couple of times in between, until in 1916 she said finally yes. So my producer, whom I worked with on 3 previous films, we said, oh, we go there immediately before she changes her mind. So we went to see Joyce. This was in October 2016 that she said yes, and early November we were in Princeton and we started filming. Then we didn't film more for a year or maybe more, because my producer first wanted to put it in, get the money for the project and all the practical details. But anyway, we had started, so that was good. And I had, this is also in the movie, but the first time I met Joyce to interview her about Blonde, already on the train back from Princeton to New York, I thought I would like to continue our conversation. And I suggested this to Joyce and she said yes. So after that, I started to read Joyce's novels and short stories. So I think during a year from there, I read about 25 novels and more short stories. And I met her again, but we also worked over the computer. So I sent her questions, and a couple of days later, I got long answers from Joyce. And the result was this book, which came out in 2004, which is Conversations with Joyce Carol Oates. So that was my first work together with Joyce. And then came the idea of a film.
Randy, I'm so curious about your reaction to the film, because you bring so much knowledge about the writer to watching it. And I was curious, what was the experience like for you? What were its pleasures or discoveries, or both?
It was a wonderful experience watching the film. Because Joyce Carol Oates has so many works and so many aspects to her work, it was interesting to see actually what you were going to leave out, what you're going to focus on and what you're going to leave out. So it was interesting to me. It seemed like you were focusing on biographical materials, so works that were, her memoirs and journals, so that could relate to her, the biographical aspect of the film. Seemed like you were focusing on novels that had real political or social implications to them. So maybe her more realistic novels. And, and things that weren't there, and you have to leave things out. Or things like the Gothic novels and her whole horror Gothic area. But yeah, it was very fascinating to watch.
That was one of the things I was thinking about a lot watching the film, of how carefully curated it was through themes, as well as how you structured it thematically. So Stig, can you tell us, were there some tough choices in the editing room?
Yeah.
Did you think about some of the things
Yes, I
Randy
mean,
mentioned?
it's been a difficult task because I have read so much more also by Joyce. Of course, I've continued to read her. So when we started to make the movie, and also especially when we started to edit it, because we had so much material, we said we have to concentrate on, say, not more than 10 books. I think it's 8 books in the movie now, because otherwise it could flow out too much. And this was, of course, also a hard decision to make, because as Randy said, she has written so much more, and also I like her Gothic novels, Bellefleur and Winterthurn, if I pronounce it right. I love them as well, especially Bellefleur, but we had to concentrate. So in the end, we choose this, which also, as Randy said, some of them has quite a strong political value. And Joyce, being also a political human being, we thought this is very important. Joyce and I, we have exactly the same age. So we have also been seeing the world change over the years from different perspectives and from different countries and views. But we thought it was important to also show these changes over the years through her novels. And I hope in some way that we have been able to.
Yeah. In that choice, you not only capture how ahead of her time that she was, but just how powerfully relevant all the work is now.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, one of my latest favorites of her is this Night, Sleep, and so on, which is one of her best novels from later time, I think. So and this was included quite late in the movie, because as we started the editing, was it a little over 2 years ago? This book came afterwards, and but we thought, and I thought, it's so important and a major work of her, so we introduced that into the movie as well. But it was a hard decision which books to choose and which to leave out, of course.
Yeah. Randy, I have a similar question for the website, because much as there's so many incredible works that Joyce produces every year, there's also so much scholarship, coming out in criticism. How do you curate the website? How do you make those tough choices about what to focus on?
I mean, partly because I'm trying to be comprehensive with the website, so I'm trying not to leave major things out. My difficulties are to just keep up with her, and in fact, I'm a little behind at the moment. But I try to make a web page for each novel, each book that she's published, with information about it, and it's taken a while to build it up. And as I said, I'm a little behind right now already, because life intervenes. When I started it, I was young, I was single, and I just spent all my time on it. So it built up very quickly, but I don't have that kind of time anymore. So I am struggling a little bit to stay up with Joyce.
It's almost like you need a
think,
team.
Randy, I think you will always be a little bit behind, because being as prolific as Joyce is, I mean, you can't keep up with her speed all the time.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Randy, how do you feel the documentary adds, kind of picking up from what we were just talking about, how the documentary adds to our understanding of Joyce Carol Oates, whether from a scholarly or a personal, perspective?
I think
I didn't get. Oh, sorry, it was to Randy. Sorry.
Okay.
No.
It's okay. I think it gives a really nice sense of her personality, which I think you don't get as much, let's say, in just like a interview or a reading that she does. I mean, the pacing of the film, I noted it was very it was very leisurely. I'm not sure I'm getting the right words here. I felt like I had time to think in between things that were happening in the film. It seemed like a very cerebral, thoughtful, it allowed me to be cerebral and thoughtful as I was watching. And I just really appreciated that pacing. And I also really appreciated seeing, I'd seen photographs of events like her National Book Award photo shoot. I'd seen photographs of that, but now this is the first time I'd ever seen the actual live film of it. So it was really wonderful to see a lot of live action pieces that I knew the era. I've seen photographs of, but that I had never actually seen that before. So I don't know. I think it just brings the person very much to the fore, where, as I think and was noted in the film, Joyce tends to like to stand behind her books.
I think it's such an
excellent. I was also very happy that we could travel with Joyce and Charlie several times, especially when we went to Spain, where she got this humor award, which is in the movie. Of course, we had lots and lots of material of Joyce and Charlie walking around in the city and things like that, which had to go out. But also, I was very glad we could go to Jerusalem when she got the big prize there 2 years ago. This was the very last thing we filmed. And we had, of course, we saw her at many other occasions, which we had to leave out because otherwise it could have been a 4-hour movie if we had gone on with all the material. Yeah.
I really agreed with Randy's comment about the pacing, and what was, I think, so beautiful in the film was the whole style and the way you made it. It just felt so thematically on point. So much of her writing talks about this kind of continuum of past and present. And in some ways, watching the film, I realized that not only was Joyce so ahead of her time in terms of how we talk about women and race relations, but also mindfulness, because that idea of being in the present tense. And so that your film really created that sense of being in real time, which is very, very hard to do, I think, in our current documentary climate, right now, that patience. You also, I think, did this beautiful job of navigating public space and private space, which is such a theme that, identity and that comes up so much, in her writing and the interviews also. So with that, did you find the process, you had this 20-year relationship. Did you find the process collaborative? Like, in what way did Joyce directly or indirectly shape the shooting style or the editing style, do you feel?
No, she was, wonderful in collaborating. She just let us be and film her whenever. And when we were setting up for some of the more direct interview passages, she went to her room and continued to write. So we put up the light and whatever in some other part of her home. And when we were ready, I called Joyce, and she came in front of the camera, and I interviewed her and she answered. And when that was finished, she went up to her room again, continued to write, and we set up for the next part and called her. So she was there, but she was also busy with her own stuff all the time.
And did you always know that you would try to film her writing? Was that something that just evolved and just being in that intimate space? It just seems so natural.
One thing which changed the movie very much in the very last editing is that in the documentaries I've made before, I'm never on camera. And that was also my idea from the start when I was filming Joyce. So I'm always behind the camera with the photographer. But at a few moments, I was filmed talking to Joyce. And it was difficult. This kind of personal portraits are sometimes very difficult to link. You link the different parts together. So I think it was my producer who said, "Isn't it a good idea that we put you into the film, even if we have very little material?" So that was the last decision we had, and I think it works. I should have been there a little bit more when I pose questions and you hear me and I'm in the room together with Joyce, but mostly we just directed the camera on Joyce and very, very seldom, almost never on me. So, but anyway, that was a very important change during the very last editing process. Yeah.
Another very strong decision you made was to not have anyone else commenting. Like, did you consider filming any interviews with experts or friends or publishers, editors?
Yes, I had with her publisher. I interviewed him. So we had this idea that we should have some people commenting on her, friends, but in the end, we thought also that's how all American documentary portraits are being made. Say, a documentary on a filmmaker, on an actor, or on a writer, or whatever, you have a dozen or 20 talking heads talking about how fantastic these people are. I mean, that's the most ordinary portrait films, documentary portraits you can see of American artists in whatever field. And we wanted to we didn't want to have that kind of presentation. So yeah, so they were left out in the end. Yeah.
Randy, what did you think of that choice? Did that strike you as very unique or striking?
Yeah, and particularly talking about it now, and so that I'm thinking back on the film, you're right, that is very different from typical celebrity or documentaries that I would see now. It's like you know, you're not making a case that here's a great writer and here's 10 people who will prove it. It's you're making a film about her, so it's assumed that you think she's worthy of having a film, but you just present her, you present her works, and it's in and of itself, it's really interesting and fascinating. Yeah, the whether she's a great writer or, you know, in the pantheon of writers, that doesn't seem to be the issue with the film. Yeah, and I think that's a great decision.
kind of follow up.
One important thing about Joyce is, which I wanted and we all wanted to have in the movie, is her teaching in different schools in Princeton and also in New York, and she was teaching also in San Francisco, where we went to film her, and this we couldn't put into the film because even if I was present both in New York and in Princeton and in San Francisco during her lectures, but Joyce allowed us just a couple of minutes in the beginning of each lesson. So we just had the chance to see her start a talk with the students, and then she stopped saying, "Stig, I'm sorry, but I think we should stop here now." And we had to leave. So the material was so scarce, so we couldn't put it together into something interesting. Yeah, as a pity, because this is quite a very, very important work for Joyce. I mean, for herself personally, she loves to continue to teach, and yeah. I also had the thought of talking to some. I did talk to some of the students in New York about her, and we also contacted Jonathan Safran Foer, though he never answered. So I had this idea to talk to some of the people after studying with her have become great writers in the States. Yeah.
Yeah, that was something you did touch on it in the film. She acknowledges that she, teaches, and it is true that it is such an important part of her life and her generosity to young writers, her mentorship of so many important writers today. But I have to admit, I didn't miss it in the film because you gave us something else, which was a more telescoped, like I felt like I was, like you mentioned the history that you shared, and I felt that through your choices of archival and which selections of text to use, I really felt like I was living this time with her, and also that you put us through in her point of view. So I wondered, could you talk a little about not only did you have to decide what books to focus on, where and what to film, what texts would you have read or shown in graphics, you also had to pick archival and over many decades of history. So could you talk a little bit about how you made some of those choices, because they were very powerful?
I'm not sure if it was the beginning of the question was a little bit flurry when I heard it, so I didn't get that.
I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about how you chose the archival? Because the archival choices you made, the very specific selections within those historical moments, they struck me as very, very specific to Joyce's point of view. And so I wondered, how did you pick some of those moments? I'm thinking particularly of the Ted Kennedy, the Ted Kennedy apology statement, if you could call it that. That was a very powerful moment. So it's just curious how you crafted
really,
that.
I mean, and this short novel of her is one of my favorites, and it was one of the novels I had read before I met her also. Yeah, Blackwater. I mean, we have had a fantastic researcher on the film, and she has found all these kind of news material which we are using in the film, and photos, and because Joyce gave us and provided us with her personal photos, which are quite scarce, because when she grew up and up there in northern New York, state of New York, they didn't have cameras, so we had very little photo material of her as a young girl or also growing up. But anyway, the other material which we with which we present her novels, also like in them, with all the newsreels from the riots which she writes about in the novel. This our researcher found in different ways, and yeah, so we collected quite a lot of this, and there we had to choose and pay for.
Right. Yeah.
It's quite expensive also.
Yes.
that material. Yeah.
Yes. With the rise of the documentary in the marketplace comes the rise of the archival price points. But you did an amazing job of really pinpointing those moments and making it very visceral. You know, with I didn't feel it was blanketed with archival, but just those very specific moments really just buttoned those quiet moments of text. That cut to the Detroit footage was really breathtaking.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm happy for that. Yes. Yeah.
Randy, over the years, so it's 25 years of documenting Joyce online. How is your sense of her from that moment of first reading? I forgot what novel it was. Oh, You Must Remember This and Maria Life.
Maria?
Right, in Maria Life.
Mm-hmm.
So from reading You Must Remember This and Maria Life in the 90s, late 80s, and starting this website, and now 25 years later, how has your sense of her as a writer, changed, evolved, or has it?
Yeah, so I mean, it took a while to sort of get a sense of her as a writer, as I just started reading books. But as I, investigated further and time goes on, and then I start reading backwards and reading criticism, I started with her, I started with her in a particular period now when she was doing realistic novels. Shortly after a lot of experimentation. So yeah, I can see a lot of phases in her writing, from experimentation to realism to, and as she goes in her short stories and her novellas, she goes into different narrative experiments and things like that. And then I'd say more lately, particularly in some of her big novels, and I know Blonde is a great example. I know that's is that Stig's, is that your favorite novel perhaps? Everything coming together, one large novel with all sorts of narrative experiments and just, a massive experimental, I don't know, culmination of everything she's doing. So I feel like things are culminating in a lot of the things that she's writing now that, that were worked on years and years before.
And Steve, over the course of making the film, what discoveries did you make, or were there surprises, or, is your sense of Joyce as a writer or a person, different 5 years later?
It's hard to say. I mean, as I said before, also being born the same year, 1938, isn't it strange? Yeah, we have, even if we have seen the world change from so different angles and different perspectives and different parts of the world, this connected us in the beginning, I think, very much. But gradually, I mean, Joyce has become a great friend. Yeah, but it's a hard question to answer. It's been such a delight to get to know her and to work with her in this way, and and of course we sent Joyce the film a couple of months ago, or is it half a year ago or something, and I'm very happy that she did like it. And then I came upon the writer whose name I forgot before, Edmund White, of course, who is a great friend, colleague, and friend of Joyce. Yeah.
The reveal when Joyce discovered her grandmother was Jewish, it's very powerfully portrayed, in the film. And I'm sure a lot of people in our community were probably thrilled to to see that. So I was wondering, do you think that has altered her sense of how we look at Joyce, her writing, her great work, her large body of work? It was beautiful to see that personal discovery in the film, and you made it very dramatic when you talked about it.
I don't know. I think definitely it has changed Joyce, this knowledge, as you can see when she is being interviewed in Jerusalem, and she almost starts to cry, and she says, "I'm not going to cry." She is that kind of person. She doesn't want to cry in front of the camera, of course. But that was, as I was there during the time she got the prize, and we talked a lot also during this period, this knowledge has changed her and changed the view on her background and upbringing, with her grandmother being so secretive about her background and never talking about it. So yeah, it's very important for Joyce. I know that. I'm sure of that. Yeah.
It brings forward so many.
And this is also after the trip to Jerusalem. We put more emphasis on this into the movie. It wasn't as strongly put before, but after the visit there and my filming of her during the talk with a lady in Jerusalem, we strengthened that part in the movie. Yeah,
it really seemed to bring forward, make so many themes in her work about identity and mystery and family secret. It just brought it all to the forefront in this incredibly beautiful, beautiful way.
yeah,
So it was great to see that. Randy, your site, I've noticed, is so interactive, and it's really touching to see the things people write when they're like, "Can you get a message to Joyce?" Or they talk about a story they want to see. And I'm just wondering, what is the day-to-day life like on the site? Do you respond to people's inquiries? How does that, does Joyce have access to those, or is there ever interaction with her about some of those deeply felt messages?
Yeah, occasionally folks really are desperate to get in touch with her, and I will never put people directly in touch with her because that's just not appropriate. But if you're enterprising, there is actually contact information in public places, like at a university website, if you happen to work there. So I usually just point people in those directions and let them find the contact information themselves. But sometimes they're really heartfelt things. Somebody's read a story or a book, and it just spoke to them, or it was their story, and they really want to talk to her. So I do get some of those things occasionally. More often than not, I'll get folks needing help to remember, oh, I read this story 20 years ago and I can't remember what it was, and they'll give me a piece of plot, and hopefully I can figure out what the story was for them, or things like that.
And do you have a project you'd like to do on the website, or is there some scholarship you'd like to see happen, or like a next?
There's just so much just in the basics of the website that I want to complete. I just want to get more information about each of the books in there. So there's plenty of work to do. I don't have any additional special projects that I'm working on.
And Stig, where can we next see your film? Can you tell us a little about its future, and both internationally and here in America?
Well, I hope that the film will be shown in as many places as possible. I know now it will be presented in Copenhagen, sometimes late March, I think, but hopefully in quite a few other countries here in Europe, because I know sometimes when I talk to Americans visiting New York or other places, and they ask me what I'm doing, and I've said I'm making this film about Joyce Carol Oates, the most common answer is, Joyce, who? I mean, Americans in general, they don't read very much, but I think she has a fantastic, many more readers in Europe, in countries like France and Spain and Italy and England, than in general in the US, as a pity, because I mean, to me, she is one of the finest writers we have. And I think it's almost a scandal she hasn't gotten the Nobel Prize. She is definitely worth it. Yeah.
Well, your film contributes so much to our understanding of her, and it's gonna be very exciting to see what happens as your film goes out into the world. So, well, I would like to thank Randy and Stig for being here for this conversation. Just so joyful to get together and talk about this film, and just the wonderful gifts Joyce Carol has shared with us as our fans, over the years. And really wish you the best of luck with this film. And Randy, I'm looking forward to spending more time on your website. And I think it'll be interesting to see the dialogue between those two as the film moves out into the world. So tremendous thanks also to Joanne and the Jewish Film Festival for having us today.